Imagine waking up tomorrow and realizing almost everyone you know has lost touch with reality. They're still walking, talking, posting, working, but the logic is gone. They say things that contradict themselves in the same sentence. They repeat slogans they can't explain. They react with outrage to questions that are perfectly reasonable. And here's the chilling twist. They don't think they're the ones who've lost it. They think you have. Psychologists have a name for this: mass psychosis, when large groups of people get trapped inside the same false reality. It's not just a bad idea spreading. It's a hypnotic state where facts don't matter, contradictions don't register, and reason is replaced by emotion. And right now, whether you see it or not, you are living in the middle of one. Today, we're going to break it down: how entire societies can fall under a collective spell, the exact steps that make it happen, and the one shift that lets you step outside of it without losing your mind in the process. Stay until the end, because the final key isn't just protection, it's liberation. Here's the thing about mass psychosis: it doesn't start with a bang. It starts with a mood, a heavy air you can't quite name. You notice rules changing without explanation. Conversations feel rehearsed. The same phrases echo across headlines, social media, and everyday talk, like everyone downloaded the same script overnight. At first, you tell yourself it's just a phase. People are stressed. Things will level out. But they don't. The script gets tighter. The range of acceptable thought gets narrower, and the penalty for stepping outside of it gets harsher. Until one day, you realize something terrifying. Most people aren't thinking at all. They're following, blindly. Mass psychosis isn't new. It's older than kingdoms, older than printing presses, older than the countries we live in. It's toppled empires, burned cities, and rewritten history. And if you don't know how it works, you'll be swept into it without even realizing it's happening. Which is exactly what we're going to expose. Starting with the oldest weapon in the arsenal of mass control, the enemy that every civilization has faced, and almost none have defeated. Mass psychosis isn't some glitch of the modern age. It's an ancient force that has shaped and often destroyed civilizations for thousands of years. If you look back far enough, you'll find entire empires brought to ruin not by invading armies, but by the slow rot of collective delusion. Ancient Rome, once the most advanced and organized society on Earth, didn't fall overnight. It crumbled under its own weight as superstition, spectacle, and distraction replaced reason. The people traded the hard work of civic responsibility for bread and circuses, entertainment to keep them pacified while reality quietly decayed behind the scenes. In the Middle Ages, waves of hysteria swept across Europe. Witch hunts, religious crusades, plagues of fear that infected whole populations. People were burned alive for imaginary crimes. Wars were fought over visions and omens. Facts didn't matter. What mattered was the story everyone agreed to believe, no matter how absurd it became. The French social psychologist Gustave Le Bon studied this over a century ago. He discovered that once individuals merge into a crowd, something strange happens. Personal responsibility dissolves. Independent thought fades. Alone, you might weigh evidence, question assumptions, and adjust your beliefs. But in a group, logic takes a backseat to emotion. The crowd moves as one, quick to anger, quick to fear, quick to obey. It's not careful, it's not patient, it's impulsive, and it's dangerous. Think of it like a tide. Alone, you can stand still. But when the tide of the crowd pulls, you move whether you want to or not. And here's the trick. People caught in it often don't feel coerced. They feel righteous. They feel part of something bigger. But the steering wheel is no longer in their hands. They've handed it over to the collective. We like to think the modern world is immune to this. After all, we have science, we have technology, we have endless access to information. But information alone doesn't grant wisdom. It just gives the crowd more material to shape its preferred narrative. The tools have changed, but the psychology is identical. The same forces that fueled mass delusions in the past are alive and well. Only now they're faster, louder, and global. And when fear enters the picture, this old enemy becomes unstoppable. If mass psychosis is the engine, fear is the fuel that makes it roar. Without fear, the crowd is restless but scattered. Introduce fear, and suddenly it has direction. Fear focuses attention, simplifies choices, and overrides the slow, careful work of reason. It doesn't even have to be fear of something real. In fact, it often works better when the threat is vague, unseen, or impossible to prove. An invisible danger can be everywhere at once, hiding in a neighbor's expression, in a stranger's cough, in the silence between conversations. The less defined the threat, the more room there is for the imagination to run wild, and the more power for anyone claiming to understand it. History is full of examples: the terror of divine punishment, the fear of foreign infiltration, the dread of economic collapse, the panic over unseen health risks. Whether based on truth or inflated beyond recognition, each has been used to rally populations into obedience. The human nervous system evolved for instant reaction to danger. When our ancestors saw movement in the tall grass, they didn't stop to debate it. They prepared to run. That reflex kept us alive in the wild. But in the age of instant information, it makes us vulnerable. A breaking news alert can trigger the same adrenaline rush as spotting a predator, even if there's no immediate danger to us at all. And once fear takes hold, the mind becomes easier to guide. A fearful brain doesn't want complexity, it wants relief. The quickest relief comes from a simple story with a clear villain and a trusted authority who promises safety. That's why fear is so effective at creating conformity. It narrows our vision until only one path seems safe to take. The most dangerous part is that people in this state rarely think they're being manipulated. On the contrary, they see themselves as vigilant and informed, even heroic. And anyone who questions their chosen narrative isn't just wrong. They're reckless, dangerous, even evil. This is how fear turns disagreement into moral outrage, and how moral outrage justifies silencing dissent. In our world, fear can be manufactured and delivered on demand. It can be packaged into 30-second clips, repeated endlessly, and piped directly into your hand before you've had your morning coffee. It becomes the background noise of life, a constant reminder that you're not safe, that you must stay with the group, that survival depends on obedience. And once fear has primed the crowd, the next step in mass psychosis becomes inevitable. To understand why mass psychosis works so well, you have to understand something buried deep in your own wiring. Long before skyscrapers, smartphones, or even written language, we lived in tribes. Belonging wasn't optional, it was survival. Being accepted meant food, shelter, and protection. Being cast out meant facing predators, starvation, and almost certain death. That truth is etched into us. Rejection doesn't just hurt emotionally. The brain processes it like physical pain. Our ancestors who valued belonging over personal judgment were more likely to survive and pass on their genes. The ones who defied the group too often didn't. Fast forward to today. Lions no longer stalk us in the grass, but that ancient program is still running in the background. Social exile no longer kills the body, but it terrifies the mind. We are wired to avoid it, even if that means silencing the part of us that sees things differently. Psychologist Solomon Asch proved just how powerful this instinct is. In the 1950s, he ran a simple experiment. Volunteers were shown a set of lines and asked a straightforward question: which two lines match in length? The answer was obvious, until the other people in the room, who were secretly actors, all gave the same wrong answer. Faced with unanimous but false agreement, most participants went along with the group. They saw the truth and ignored it. Not because they were weak or unintelligent, but because the need to belong is older and stronger than the need to be right. This is exactly what mass psychosis exploits. When fear rises, the urge to seek safety in the group overwhelms the quiet voice of reason. That voice says, something is off. The group says, you're imagining things. And the fear of being the only one who sees the problem is enough to make you stop seeing it at all. In our hyper-connected world, this effect is amplified. Your tribe isn't just the people you know. It's millions of strangers who can instantly approve, condemn, or shame you. The fear of exile from this global crowd can be sharper than any physical threat our ancestors faced. And once this ancient program takes over, it's only a matter of time before the crowd moves as one. The question is, where is it heading? The answer lies in the next stage of the process, a sequence so predictable that history has recorded it again and again. Mass psychosis doesn't appear overnight. It unfolds in stages, the same pattern playing out across cultures, centuries, and continents. Once you know the stages, you start to see them everywhere, from ancient history to the latest headlines. Stage 1. Disorientation. It begins when the old order starts to wobble. Economies strain, leaders contradict themselves, trusted institutions falter. The patterns people rely on no longer make sense. It feels like the ground is shifting beneath your feet. The mind, desperate for stability, starts scanning for answers. Stage 2. Simplification. Into that uncertainty, a story emerges. It's easy to follow, emotionally charged and endlessly repeated. It points to a villain, a savior, and a set of rules. Complexity disappears. Nuance is replaced by absolutes, good or evil, right or wrong, us or them. People cling to it because it feels solid, even if it's not true. Stage 3. Conformity. More and more people adopt the new narrative. Some believe it completely, others have doubts, but keep quiet, assuming they're the only ones who disagree. This is pluralistic ignorance, the belief that you're alone in your skepticism, when in reality, many share it but are too afraid to speak. Silence gets mistaken for agreement, and agreement becomes the new reality. Stage 4. Aggression. Once the story is dominant, dissent becomes dangerous. Those who question it are labeled as threats, immoral, reckless, even enemies of the people. The crowd starts policing itself, enforcing the rules socially, politically, sometimes violently. Debate dies. Obedience is rewarded. Independent thought is punished. Stage 5. Awakening. Eventually, cracks appear in the illusion. Contradictions pile up. Reality pushes through. A few people start to question, then more. The collective trance begins to weaken. But this stage is fragile. If the awakening comes too early, those who see through the illusion can be crushed by the still dominant crowd. If it comes too late, the damage is already done. These stages aren't just societal. They happen inside individuals. You may have felt them yourself. The confusion, the relief of a simple answer, the pressure to conform, the hostility toward dissent, and finally, the uneasy clarity when you realize the story was never the whole truth. Recognizing the pattern doesn't make you immune, but it gives you a map. And with a map, you can choose your path. Whether to march with the crowd through every stage, or step off the road before it ends in disaster. Awakening is the moment the spell starts to crack. It rarely happens in a single dramatic burst. More often, it's a series of small, unsettling realizations. Something doesn't add up. A detail that was supposed to be solid suddenly shifts. You notice that certain facts are never mentioned, certain questions never answered. At first, you brush it aside. Everyone else seems fine. Maybe you're overthinking, but then it happens again and again. And before long, the cracks spread. You see events firsthand that get reported differently the next day. You hear rules explained one way this week, another way next week, with no acknowledgement that anything has changed. You feel the unspoken pressure, not to understand, but to agree. Awakening isn't a rush of joy. It can feel like grief. You start realizing how much of what you trusted was built on unstable ground. You remember defending positions you now see were flawed, even harmful. And that realization can hurt because it means you were part of sustaining the illusion. The process can be lonely. The more you notice, the harder it becomes to talk about. Conversations turn cautious. Jokes feel risky. Friends you've known for years may suddenly treat you differently. It's not uncommon to lose relationships, opportunities, and the easy comfort of belonging. That's why awakening takes courage. Not the loud, fist-in-the-air kind, but the steady kind that holds you upright when the crowd moves in the opposite direction. History is filled with people who reached this stage long before the majority. Socrates, Galileo, Orwell. They lived in times when questioning the dominant narrative wasn't just unpopular, it was dangerous. Yet they asked the questions anyway. Many paid a steep price, but they also left behind proof that it is possible to see clearly in a world determined to stay blind. The danger of awakening is that it can trap you in bitterness. If all you do is tear down illusions, you risk living in constant suspicion. True awakening goes further. It moves from disillusionment to discernment. The ability to see manipulation without assuming everyone is an enemy, to think independently without becoming isolated in your own cynicism. When you reach that point, you stop needing the crowd's approval. You stop fearing its disapproval. And you begin to live in a way where illusions have no real hold over you, even if the rest of the world keeps chasing them. Escaping mass psychosis isn't a one-time breakthrough. It's a skill you have to maintain, like keeping your body healthy. The goal isn't to shut the world out, but to filter what comes in and decide for yourself what stays. The first step is awareness. Pay attention to your own thoughts and ask, where did this come from? Was it the result of your own reasoning, or did it slip in through repetition, headlines, or the opinions of people you didn't even consciously choose to trust? Just because a thought feels like yours doesn't mean it started with you. The second step is emotional control. Mass psychosis feeds on reactivity. Outrage and fear are contagious. The faster you react, the easier you are to manipulate. This doesn't mean suppressing emotion. It means creating space between trigger and response. That space is where choice lives. The third step is meaning. Without a strong why, you will be swept into the why of the crowd. Your anchor might be a commitment to truth, a spiritual belief, a creative calling, or the protection of those you love. Whatever it is, it must be deep enough to hold you steady when the cultural tide turns. The fourth step is finding real allies. Not an echo chamber where everyone agrees, but a small group of people who value honesty over comfort. People who will challenge you when you're wrong, spot the blind spots you can't see, and stand beside you when speaking the truth isn't popular. A single mind committed to clarity can make an impact, but a connected network of them can change the direction of a culture. The fifth step is controlling your information diet. The modern world is designed to flood you with noise. If you want clarity, you have to be intentional about what you consume. Seek sources that show how they reach their conclusions, not just what those conclusions are. Engage with opposing viewpoints, not to weaken your beliefs, but to test and strengthen them. Building immunity is about staying in the world without being pulled into the trance of the crowd. It's the ability to walk through a storm without carrying the storm inside you. And when you master it, you don't just protect yourself. You become a stabilizing presence for others. In a culture built on emotional contagion, a calm, clear mind is a rare and powerful force. The deepest root of mass psychosis isn't ignorance, and it's not even fear of the truth. It's fear of being alone with the truth. Most people can handle reality if others are standing there with them. What feels unbearable is seeing it clearly and realizing no one else is willing to admit it. That's why so many will trade truth for the safety of a shared illusion. The applause of the crowd feels like validation, but it's a fragile kind. It disappears the moment you stop repeating the script. The final escape from the collective trance is learning to live without needing the crowd's approval. That doesn't mean rejecting community. It means detaching your identity from its acceptance. You become the kind of person who can stand in a room full of disagreement and stay steady because your compass isn't external, it's internal. When you reach this place, everything changes. You stop performing for applause. You stop defending yourself against every misunderstanding. You stop measuring your worth by how many people agree with you. And the silence of others no longer feels like a threat. This is real freedom. The ability to think your own thoughts, speak your own words, and live by your own understanding, without resentment toward those who can't follow you there. The most resilient individuals in history had this quality. They didn't just resist the herd, they outgrew the need for it. They found their home in the truth itself, even if it meant walking outside the walls of popular opinion. From this place, you don't have to fight mass psychosis head-on. Your existence itself disrupts it. Not because you're attacking it, but because you're proof that another way of living is possible. Those still trapped in the collective trance may feel threatened by you, but some will quietly be drawn to your steadiness, and they'll start remembering that their mind belongs to them. Escaping in this way isn't a one-time decision. It's a daily practice. You'll be tempted to trade clarity for comfort. You'll be invited back into the safety of agreement. And you'll have to choose, again and again, whether that safety is worth the cost. The revolution that matters most isn't overthrowing systems. It's freeing the individual mind. When enough minds are free, the systems will follow. Until then, the most powerful thing you can do is unbecome what the world has tried to make of you. Stand your ground, even if you stand alone. Speak your truth, even if your voice shakes. Walk with clarity, not because it wins applause, but because it's the only way to walk without losing yourself. When you do, you may not change the whole world overnight, but you'll change your own. And that's where every real revolution begins.